Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Lisa Chamet, and I'm the Head of Partnerships here at Charity Digital. Whilst we are waiting for more people to join us, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box and let us know where you're joining from. I am myself joining from Kent, very rainy part of Kent, unfortunately. But without further ado, a quick intro to Charity Digital, as maybe some of you might be joining us for the first time. Charity Digital, we're a registered UK charity, and our mission is to help other charities and UK-based nonprofits increase their impact by being more digital. We do this through two main activities. First is providing access to the software products charities need at heavily discounted prices, and also by publishing contents like articles, videos, and podcasts, and running webinars like this one to educate the sector, professionals and volunteers on how to make the best use of digital tools and technology. Today, we're proud to say that we've helped over 1 million charity professionals learn more about digital transformation, and enabled over 77,000 charities to save over, £250 million of tech investment. So if you have any question, please feel free to reach out to us in the chat, or to visit our website. Now, on to today's session. We are welcoming Andrew Wiltshire from Oblongata, and we'll be discussing digital estates and donation, how to improve the supporter experience. We will go over a few bits, such as how to ensure that your digital estate offers the optimum supporter experience, how to provide a frictionless donation funnel for your donors, and how to ensure that your tech is joined up, allowing your website to speak to your CRM, and have a more holistic view and frictionless view and experience for your donors. Before handing over to Andrew, I just want to share a few house rules. So as you may have noticed, the session is being recorded, and we will upload it to be able to watch on demand within approximately a week's time. So the slides and all the resources will also be made available to you by, over the next couple of days. So don't worry if you missed anything. Closed captions are available for today's session. To enable them, you can have a look at the bottom of the Zoom window and click on the show caption button, which is, closed caption and then show subtitle. During the webinar, please do ask loads of questions in the Q&A section of Zoom, so that our panelists will address them at the end of the presentation. And feel free to share any tips and experiences in the chat section. If there's any particular question in the Q&A section that you would like answered, you can also upvote it. Finally, if you encounter any sound or image issues, please do let us know in the chat, and we'll do our very best to get the session back to normal. And now, without further ado, let me hand over to Andrew, who's Managing Director at Oblongata. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you very much for the great introduction. And yes, I can say it is really rainy here in Surrey where I am. So hopefully the weather's better where some of our participants are today. But thank you for the introduction. There we go. So we are Oblongata, and what we'd like to take you over today, I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of the aims of the session, a bit of an introduction about us as a business, some of the context and challenges that we see and you will be more than aware of within the marketplace at the moment, some considerations you might want to look at to mitigate the challenges that you're seeing. And then in the second half, look at building for success. How can you look at your digital estate and make it the most optimum experience for your users? And then we'll touch upon the scaling your technology, and then we'll do a roundup. So really the aims for today, I'd really love to leave you with some inspiration around innovation, to give you some practical ideas and align to the conversations we have with many of our clients. So where to begin your journey? It's always a conundrum that, clients we work with and the people we talk with face, where to begin. So I don't know why I've got a picture of myself and you see me in the video chat, but my name's Andrew Wiltshire. I'm the Managing Director of Oblongata. I've got 20 years experience across commercial growth, business strategy, managing client relationships with a particular focus on technology. I've also been really lucky to have gained experience across the world and understand different cultures. And I'm also very proud to be a trustee at Parkside Aldershot, a registered charity that provides support for children and adults with learning disabilities in my local area, which covers Hampshire, Surrey, and the surrounding areas. So who are we? Well, we are a specialist agency who focus on helping out within the third sector. We work with clients in a number of ways. Some of them are listed here, such as CMS development, looking at SEO optimization, front-end design, looking at copywriting and content across people's websites. And a big thing that we're speaking to a number of clients about at the moment is how that whole digital ecosystem can work together. The business was born out of a desire to create a real change through the use of technology, and I'm really passionate about how technology can help solve some of the challenges we see. The core business pillars we have are innovation, and some of those for your sector I'll be able to share today, sustainability and accessibility for all. And we love working with clients collaboratively, and we always look for shared values to build relationships for the longer term. So I thought I'd start the main presentation with giving a bit of context, and I am no doubt aware that many of you joining us today will be more than aware of some of the challenges in the marketplace, and focusing particularly on the last few years, recognising that there's been a huge increase in demand on services. There's been reduced donations. However, I did read in The Guardian just the other day that last year donations were up, but by less people. And of course, the challenges of limited resources. We are all-time poor, and especially, working with in my guise as a trustee of a charity, recognise how stretched and limited resources are. Arguably, you could possibly call the last sort of 4 to 5 years a bit of a perfect storm, beginning with the COVID pandemic and then through to the cost of living crisis. We've all been squeezed with our personal finances. And of course, in correlation with this, the donations through to charities has decreased, as well as the number of charities operating in the UK. In 2021, according to the NCVO Almanac last year, there was a 1% decline in charitable organisations, which was in line with 2018-19 levels, which would suggest things are going slightly backwards, which is a shame. In line with the increase of the national living wage and other costs, energy costs, charities reported a significant increase of at least 5% of their costs last year, and a significant number have seen those costs raised by over 10%. I think it's fair to say the pandemic exacerbated some of these issues. It had huge ramifications for both the economy, both in the UK and globally. But focusing particularly on the charity sector, from the NCVO Almanac, we saw that there was a 91% reporting rate of charities seeing financial difficulties, and aligned to that, there was around 4,300 closures. It's fair to point out that the effects have been somewhat disproportionate, unfortunately. Smaller charities that have experienced the greatest issues. The most concentrated number of closures have been experienced with charities with a revenue or turnover of less than 100,000. And the number of charities with revenues of under 100,000 declined to just 80% versus what it was at 80% just over 20 years ago. Newly registered organisations dipped below average during and post-pandemic. And there's been a squeeze on household finances, and this has a direct correlation with reduced household donations. 2022, in fact, saw an increase in closures of charities of 5,500. Something that I've seen both professionally and personally, their staff recruitment has been more challenging. Really interesting report from Creston Global showed that 64% of charities have said that it's become more difficult to recruit and retain staff. Interestingly, no one said it had become less challenging. So it's either the same or overwhelmingly more challenging. And of course, part of this has been the increase in national living wage, which has further increased the costs onto organisations. And there is a wider socio-economic context here, reported from a report by the Pro Bono Economics and Nottingham Trent University in just February this year. They'd worked out that £13 billion had been lost from local authority funding in the last 14 years. And nearly a third of charities that work with councils expect that funding to fall further. 13 billion is a staggering amount of money to be lost from the sector from local authorities. And moving on from kind of more domestic focus, there's been a huge increase, as we're all aware, very tragically, in global conflicts. And of course, funding has been stretched in order to support our allies and other countries across the world. Conflicts have continued to contribute to volatile energy pricing and sort of general energy security. The image in the backdrop there is wholesale energy pricing from Ofgem. And whilst they peaked and then have come back down, as you can see, energy pricing is still higher than it was in 2018-19. Inflation has hit us all. Inflation, although falling, it does continue to add a fiscal drag on public finances. And of course, that's what I mentioned about the perfect storm, really, of all of these things going on. But there are some upside. I don't want to come across as all doom and gloom here. There are ways in which your organisation can mitigate some of those challenges. And for us, for the work with our clients, we've put these into sort of three broad areas, which I'll go into detail hereafter. Some factors that you could consider is creating greater impact. It's having better communication. And as Lisa touched upon in introduction, it's about harmonising all of those systems that you use to the best effect possible. So when considering impact first, it can be split again into sort of three core areas: design, accessibility, and creating a connection. And all of that can be pinned by some innovation. So focusing on design, we've all heard this phrase, we eat first with our eyes. It's attributed to Apicius, a first century Roman gentleman. And I think it goes without saying that a key component of any website is design. I think the real key comes from successfully blending the style, so a modern look and feel, or certainly contemporary, but aligning that to your charity or your organization's personality and ethos, something that makes you who you are. We're all time poor and very much appreciate you making the time to be with us today. But when we are so time poor, it's so important that websites are easy to navigate. There's a strong brand style and clear call to actions. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a case in point. We worked with a client called Lifelights, who are a wonderful charity supporting children with life-limiting conditions and providing tech for them. They approached us to review their website and provide some recommendations. They'd identified that the website in its current format, it just didn't create an impact. It had a somewhat dated look and feel, and it didn't capture who they were and the unique nature of what they do. And we supplied a report of our findings along with some conceptual designs. And I thought it would be useful today to kind of give you a before and after. Now, Lifelights are going through the process of changing it. So at the moment, were you to look at their website, it would be the images I'm about to show you. But as you can see, it's an okay website, but it has no clear call to action. It's quite sparse. It felt to the charity and felt to Lifelights that it was quite light on look and feel. And in the bottom right-hand corner there, their donation funnel is a pop-out iModal window. So there's a number of factors, without going into details of those, about some of the issues that it has that they had recognised and that we worked with them on sort of identifying what was key. So what we provided them, as I mentioned, was some new designs. The reason I wanted to show you these today is just to give you a flavour of, as we talk a little bit more about how design can help impact your charities, it's about blending a unique style, so your brand guidelines, with a contemporary look and feel. And I think, you know, we will all recognize that technology moves on incredibly quickly, style moves on incredibly quickly. And so it's important that both your web property looks and feels modern and current, but also, perhaps more importantly, truly conveys the unique nature of the work you do and the impact that you create. So this was a conceptual design for their homepage, landing page. It's a landing page again on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, a fully branded in their colors, branded donation tool. On the right-hand side of the image here, we've got an impact tracker. We speak to a number of clients about, with one eye on having people looking at how much they can actually donate in the backdrop of everything that I just touched upon, actually bringing a tangible element to the impact that their donations give is really important. And so this is a semi-live or real-time impact tracker that can pull through data that would really show the donation, the people that support the charities, the good that they're doing. This is just another image of where the pop-out donation window sits more within the look and feel of the website design. And this is just stripping out into their website page. And, you know, I encourage you after the session to perhaps go and have a look at their website in its current guise. And they've been very open and honest about it needs improving. And that's why we provided these conceptual designs. Something I'll touch upon a little bit later is the use of imagery within your designs to make sure that you're capturing the essence of what you do. And I go back to the point of you eat with your eyes first, as we've all heard that phrase, and actually an image can create such a connection with your audience. Innovation through design doesn't have to mean reinventing the wheel. And I think a number of clients that we work with have used subtle innovation to increase their impact and actually increase the user experience. And as I just mentioned, this is another example of a donation tracker that we took and are working with the client. It brings a real-time, tangible impact to the user's donations. And also brings to life some of that kind of their impact report that they have, which is often housed as a static PDF. This brings it to life. Design innovation can also be a force for good. Technology now allows you the opportunity to offer things like changing the intensity of your website, which means less computing, less energy consumption, and less CO2 usage. So now I'd like to talk about impact and the accessibility part of it. Impact is not limited to just style and design, and actually creating impact by ensuring that your web property is accessible to all is of paramount importance. It ensures that you've got an inclusive online experience, and it breaks down some of those barriers to entry, and it allows people with disabilities to engage fully with digital content. The key points are that making sure your website is accessible means that it enhances customer engagement, it delivers on the legislative requirements that are set, it creates a positive consumer impact, and as well, it demonstrates that you're forward-thinking and you're open to all. There are a myriad of things you can do to make sure that your website is as accessible as possible and meeting WCAG guidelines, such as resizable text, making sure navigation is intuitive, and make sure it's compatible with screen readers. I think it's important to remember that making sure that your website is as accessible is just as important for people with disabilities and those without, making sure that it is accessible to everyone. I was astounded when I read pulling together this presentation for today, that 96.3% of homepages in 2023, according to WebAIM, had detectable homepage accessibility errors. What's probably more frightening is that has only dropped 0.5% year on year. Given the advent of so much more technology, you would hope that number decreased dramatically. But when you look at it in the context of the last 4 years, it's only declined 1.5%. So some of the key errors that people are seeing with accessibility are the low contrast, missing an alternative text, and empty links. So returning 404 errors. There are some ways you can add innovation into your website to make sure websites are accessible to everyone. You can utilize on-page scanning from providers to deliver automated reports to highlight those accessibility failures. This takes away the manual requirement, and we're all time poor, and so allowing an automated report would allow you to highlight the issues and then apply those quickly to ensure your website is truly accessible to everyone. And the conversations that we have when we talk to clients about looking at broad website projects and redesign, it's about having an accessibility first mindset, making sure that your digital design through to implementation is accessibility focused. Now, I couldn't do a digital webinar today without talking about artificial intelligence. There's a lot of talk about the advent of AI and all that it can do, but I really do believe that it can play such a pivotal role in shaping and helping with accessibility. You hear the word revolutionize a lot in the context of artificial intelligence, but it really will allow the existing challenges that are there and the divide to be closed between those with disabilities and those without. Things like speech recognition, natural language processing, and image recognition will improve that communication and reduce barriers to accessibility for all. And I think that, whilst we're probably not quite there yet, I think we're on the cusp of making some incredible changes to allow accessibility for all using AI. And finally, within the impact section, I want to talk about connection. So studies have shown that the parts of the brain that process emotions is up to 20 times faster than other parts of the brain. And that's because it's dealt with an ancient part of the brain known as the limbic system. The limbic system, unlike your frontal cortex, has fewer neurons to process information, hence why it's faster. So in the context of the charitable sector, when donors feel emotionally invested in a cause, they are more likely to give generously and continue giving over time. If I were to ask you what your favorite film was or why was it your favorite, I think there's a good chance that it would include one or more of it's a powerful story that invokes a wide variety of emotions. It has vivid and emotive imagery, or it resonates to you on a personal level. And the same can be done when telling a story about your organization or cause while fundraising. Studies have shown that your cause is more likely to be noticed when you have developed rich emotional connections with your audience. So some connective innovation, when you make your connections with your audience, you've got to remember those emotional connections should be accessible for all. And I touched upon you eat with your eyes again. I labour the point because actually using imagery to help support your text and content is incredibly important, and something that we talk to our clients about is the use of hero visuals, using imagery and rich media to help deliver those emotional messages. And we're starting to see more personalized and contextual experiences. So based on GDPR compliance and associated consents, websites are able to curate experiences for the user depending on campaigns and where they're coming from. And that can offer a more vibrant website experience attuned to the needs of the individual. So now I'm going to talk about communication. Some rules for communication are that it should always be authentic. It should always be consistent, but it should always be engaging. Astoundingly, the first written communication was recorded more than 9,000 years ago. And much like me talking to you today, communication in both our personal and professional lives remains integral to us as humans. The ability to communicate effectively and develop an emotional connection rapport is so important. Digital estates and your digital estates must be able to effectively build that communication with your audience. It's really important to remember that your story is unique to you and your organization. And this is where we're talking about authenticity. We talked about design, but that should be complemented, augmented by communication that truly shows the uniqueness of the things you do. And the dictionary definition of authentic is of undisputed origin, not a copy, genuine. So I would implore you, when you do your communications to your audience, to stay true to who you are, what you do, and perhaps most importantly, why you do it. Communication should also be consistent. All copy should be from one source and derived from your top line mission and values. We've worked with a number of clients where, due to the nature of their organizations, copy has had a different tone of voice. It might have a different messaging. We all give and receive information differently. And so I would implore you to ask yourself the following questions for each piece of copy. Does it put my message across in a short form? Does it reflect the personality of the organization? And does it align to our mission and values? If any of the above are no, then change it. There was a gentleman in the 1930s, was a marketeer called Wally Ollins, and I think that he sums this up absolutely perfectly. In everything the organization does, owns, and produces, it should project a clear idea of what it is. This is achieved by consistency in purpose, performance, and appearance. When we talk about consistency, it also takes the form of frequency. And as Lisa touched upon at the start, making sure that using your CRM, your messaging should be consistently, in the form of frequency, put to your audience. Following your GDPR compliance and capturing the data, you should be using that to utilize your communications to increase donor frequency. Again, it aligns to, we are all time poor, we're all busy people. And actually, we've all downloaded apps on our phones and used them once and never used them again because there's no consistency of use. Having a consistency of communication is aligned to increasing donor frequency. Ensuring that your external communications are consistent with the messaging on your website and within your CMS is also important. You want to ensure that there's no disconnect between the two. Whilst digital estate properties might seem disparate systems, I cannot implore you enough to make sure that they work in harmony. And as I'll touch upon shortly, we work with a number of clients where they use lots of different systems and they may work, but are they working for you or against you? The average, so when we talk about communication and engagement, the average attention span of someone in Gen Z is only 8 seconds. And I would probably argue that it's probably less. And building on that sort of authenticity and consistency and emotional connections, communication to your audience is paramount in respect of the attention span of your audience. You should be using imagery and rich media, which are powerful tools in storytelling to deliver that information really importantly. You've got limited time, as we note here. And as we know, emotions are processed quickly in the limbic system of the brain. And so therefore, you need to engage your audience quickly. Now, according to the Harvard Business Review, there are 3 key rules of engagement. We won't touch upon physical engagement, but for the purposes of this, mental engagement. Ask your audience questions, speak to them, engage them in that way, get them thinking. And I've already asked you some questions today. There's also linguistic engagement, making sure that the tone of voice you're using is appropriate to your audience. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about harmonization. There will be many of you within this webinar today that will recognize and or use a number of the words and systems on the screen here now. This is not an exhaustive list, and we work with clients where there are far more within that. But for illustrative purposes, ensuring that all of those systems work in harmonization, it's not to say that they all rely on each other, but all work in a harmonious way is incredibly important. So I'll touch a little bit more about harmonization in a moment when we consider it within building for success. So far, we've covered the challenges and headwinds and some areas for mitigation. But a big question we're asked by many of our clients is, when you start your transformation, where do you start? How and when? And what about the future? So if utopia is moving from lots of disparate systems to a set of systems that all work together for you, it's important to remember that getting there is far from a straight line process. It's likely that the current setup works. I personally, as a slightly different example, I've been with HSBC Bank since 2003. I don't really like them, but it works for me, and therefore I haven't been moved to change. But within the context of the charitable sector, there's often budgetary and other constraints, which mean that whilst your system might work, it's probably a low priority to change. But given budgetary constraints and other constraints, as we touched upon at the start of the presentation, including increased demand, reduced donations, and simply limited resource, it can be a challenge. But the pathway can be sequential, and you can make sure that it fits around budget, your resource and timelines to achieve your end goals. So building for success, as I've said, your systems must work for you. You need to isolate each software platform in your ecosystem and ask 3 key questions. Does it deliver what I need it to? And that can be whether it be rich media to form those emotional connections. That may be content updating. That may be integrating other systems within that system into one. Does it offer me the flexibility to change and edit? And quite importantly, will it scale with my organization? I wanted to highlight some of the common challenges we see with clients and organizations. Site navigation. It doesn't often have a clear call to action. Outdated design. Copy that isn't consistent with the messaging of the organization, and user friction. And the number one issue we see with our clients is user friction, especially within the donation process funnel. It's one thing leading people to the point of donation, but you've got to remove the friction, the barriers to people going through to completing that process. So I thought I'd put some context on this with a real life example. As you will expect, I can't tell you the name of the client, so let's call it Client X for today. But I think it was a good example of what I'm trying to tell you today. We worked with one client who was absolutely exceptional in their external communications. I mean, they were brilliant. They utilized their CRM and social media channels really well. On one campaign, they managed to deliver thousands of visitors to their website. But the same client realized that their design of their website didn't reflect the external communications and the organization's work and personality. The site navigation was awkward and it was pretty poorly designed. It didn't really use a lot of rich media. There wasn't a real clear call to action, and there was a donation funnel that, as I previously mentioned, in the last slide, it put up barriers to conversion. So what did this mean? So they managed to drive circa 15,000 people to the website during the campaign period. And this is a totally true story. And this then led to 10 people going on to donate. Now, I'm no Carol Vorderman, but even I know that 10 out of 15,000 people is an incredibly small percentage. So as I mentioned, they got the connection right, which is great, but where they lacked the ways to move forward was in their design and their accessibility. And focusing on accessibility, one of the key areas identified was that the donation journey for the user was poor. It took the donor off site. It decreased their trust. I don't know about the people that have joined us today. I have a healthy level of cynicism with things on digital payment providers, and making sure that you can trust that is really, really important. And I think moving you away from a site that you're already on is already a red flag for many people. Their donation funnel also had limited functionality. things that you would expect commensurate with modern day donation tools, such as gift aid, different types of frequency of payments, the ability to pay via Google Pay, Apple Pay, etc. And the donation experience simply wasn't accessible to the user, to any user. Now, I'm hoping that there are some people in the audience that will remember Strike It Lucky. So I used to love this. I used to watch it with my mum. Brilliant show. Michael Barrymore, great host. For those of you who don't, at the end of the game, the person who got through to the end, the challenge was to get from the left-hand side of the studio, the left-hand side of the screen, to the right-hand side. Your path was far from linear, though. You had to try and you might have to go up, you might have to go down, and you had to avoid the hot spots. And the reason I say this is because understanding where you start on your journey and understanding that it's far from a straight line is incredibly important. And that was the point of putting in one of my favorite shows, Strike It Lucky. You need to identify the role of each system that you use and where it fits in with your digital ecosystem. We've already answered those questions about does it deliver each platform, does it deliver what I need it to? Does it give me flexibility? Will it scale? But the next steps are to prioritize which of those areas need to be evolved. And a key question we're asked a lot is when. You shouldn't be afraid to break your projects down into phases, but I would recommend no more than 3 to 5 phases. You need to be realistic and understand that there should be a goal timeline, but things do change, both within your organization and your digital partners. You should set KPIs for yourself and your digital partner, but importantly, it should align to your overarching strategic plan. It's important that you work out from the start the scope of your requirements and set a budget for it. And something that I would implore everyone here to do today is working with your digital partners. Look to gain additional value with something like proof of concepts or show sites or mutually beneficial agreements whereby you can benefit for your audience. Now, I'm not a betting man, but I would wager that not many people in the webinar, well, I hope not, would know who painted the image on the left. I would wager that some people would probably know from the style who did the image on the right. It's Pablo Picasso, the sailor. Interestingly, that they are both done by the same people, both done by Picasso. And I wanted to put this in because I wanted to highlight the point that it's about evolution. Your journey from where you are now to where you want to be is an evolution. And it does take time to find that style. So finishing up is talking about scaling with your technology. We have, in the last 20, 25 years, we have witnessed some of the most unprecedented events, probably in living memory. We've seen global conflict. We've had 9/11, we've had Donald Trump, we've had Brexit, we had the 2008 financial crisis, COVID, AI, and that list is by no means exhaustive. And, you know, on the horizon, we've got the UK general election and potentially Donald Trump back in the White House. So thinking about your technology and scaling, your technology, just like your organization, will evolve. And the concept of future-proof is false. And the image I wanted to put up on the screen here is actually my first mobile phone I had. It was a Orange network provider Bosch mobile phone. And I also realized probably the same color as Donald Trump, but for another day. Why I put this on here is because when I got that phone, I thought to myself, wow, I'm going to keep that phone forever. It's brilliant. But technology has and will continue to rapidly evolve and change in a rapidly changing world. And therefore, it's really important that the digital properties within your estate meet as a minimum the following criteria. Does it meet my needs now? Will it give me 3 years of service? Now, there will be some people that will ask, well, I want it to last longer or maybe longer than 3 years. I would suggest to you, would you keep your mobile phone longer than 3 years or your laptop longer than 3 years, possibly, or you may find that it's become obsolescent or it is not meeting the needs that you need at the time, and your website should be no different. It should align to your overarching strategic plans, whether that be 3 or 5 years. But does your digital estate, can it evolve with you in that initial 3-year period? And can it scale with you? If they're not ticking those boxes, it can be a costly problem that the investment in services to help remedy those problems will mount up. So I would implore you to interrogate, to research everything and execute a plan. So in summary, we live in globally uncertain times and there is continued uncertainty. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There are ways that you can mitigate some of those challenges through impact, through improving communication and harmonizing your systems so they work for you. The technology you use is often fragmented. You often use different services from different providers within your digital estate. So it's important to have a cohesive digital ecosystem, both now and in the future. Remember, like Strike It Lucky, the path is not linear and there will be bumps along the road like the hotspots on Strike It Lucky. Don't be afraid to interrogate the technology you use. Don't be like me with HSBC. Is your technology that you're using the right fit? Does it actually work for you? Or is it just a band-aid over the problem for now? If anyone ever tells you that some piece of technology is future-proof, is being, and I thought I'd put this politely, economical with the truth. As I mentioned, technology changes so fast, and probably it's changing faster now than at any point in time. You need to chart a manageable course that works for you and your organization, and have a clear pathway and a budget for your goals, and have those KPIs and metrics for success. Like your organization evolves, technology evolves as well. So have a realistic shelf life for the technology and project that's aligned to your strategic plan. So hopefully today, I have given you some little nuggets of inspiration for innovation that you can adopt. Hopefully there's some practical ideas, and also giving you a flavour of where you might want to begin, the questions you want to ask as you maybe start or are even on your digital journey. And as you will know by now, I'm quite a fan of quotes, and I just wanted to finish with this from Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for this very insightful presentation. It's really, really interesting. So without further ado, let's dive straight into a few questions, and please feel free to continue asking questions. We'll be together till about 5 to 2, so please feel free to provide and ask loads of questions in the Q&A section. Obviously, watching your session, there was a few things that we've also seen in the chat. But what would you say is your biggest challenge you've been finding in your work with charities and their donation platforms?
Yeah, so I think that's probably twofold. I think there is a disconnect between converting a supporter from a one-time donation to recurring.
Yeah.
That is a challenge we see, and then layered with that, sometimes either together or separately, is that sort of trust and friction. As I say, we all expect that ubiquitous, easy use of things, and we've seen that working with clients, that as soon as there are even minor barriers, it tends to break down that kind of process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yes, and we've also got some content on our website that indicate that branding is very important, and that I think it was an Enfuse report from a couple of years ago. There were a big proportion of people who didn't remember the last charities they had donated to. I think it was perhaps 2 in 5, and that was mainly because the branding wasn't memorable. So it's all part of that experience and
Yeah.
that journey. Yeah, no, brilliant, thank you. Moving over to other questions. Question from Sarah. Would you say that AI takes away from authenticity?
Personally, I think there's a place for AI. It's a difficult question, and thank you, Sarah. I think it's a question that a lot of people ask. I would say one side of the things is use AI where AI is needed. Does it take away from authenticity? No, I think that I think you can marry it with who you are as a person. I've used GPT for some LinkedIn posts, but I've always found that I've edited those posts
Yeah.
because I don't think it takes away from the authenticity, but it might give you some bulbs of inspiration. So I would always recommend marrying the two together.
Yes, yes, and we also got some great articles about that. So long as you keep human oversight, would say, yeah, please do use
Yeah.
AI tools to help you with creating content, but just make sure that it's still within your tone of voice and yeah, your
Exactly. I
branding.
think I think one of the things, yeah, need to be very mindful of that whilst sort of AI and things like Chat GPT are great, what they do not know, no one will know your organization better than you
Mhm.
and what resonates with your audience. So AI is a great tool to give you some seeds to kind of maybe grow on, but it should be used carefully when trying to generate specifically what Sarah asked, that really authentic communication and what makes you unique.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Moving on to another question. You mentioned AI earlier in relation to accessibility. Are
Mm.
you so concerned about the ethical and especially environmental issues with AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's inescapable that you read the news and not read about sort of the ethical side of AI. I think you summed it up just a second ago, and I think with any context with AI, you have to have human oversight. I
Mm.
don't think you can escape that, and I would never want to entrust it completely to AI. I think it has its purposes, but I do think that you need to make sure that it is augmenting what you're doing and
You're
really is
doing.
breaking down barriers. Of course, there is the question marks over kind of the sustainability side of AI, and I think that it's at its nascent stages. I certainly see it having some benefits to sustainability and the environment through ease of use, speeding things up. But I think we're on a journey with AI. I think we'd all realize that it's an evolving piece.
Yeah, an evolving pace. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Another question, and they keep on coming, so it's great.
Ooh.
So how do you balance a streamlined supporter experience when donating with gathering data?
Sorry, did you say that again, Lisa?
The-
Sorry.
So how do you balance a streamlined supporter experience when donating with gathering all that data?
So I mean, I think it goes down to consent, isn't it? You need to be
Mm,
making sure that you're implementing the right the data marketing consents. That's obviously paramount. It's a legislative requirement. Um, you do need, it's a careful balance. You need to
mm,
make sure that you are engaging with your audience on the terms that they have agreed, and making sure that your web property, both your design and then that donation funnel meet those requirements, but making sure that people are fully aware of the consents that they make.
yeah, yeah. And there's also, I think, an element of how much data do we ask, and at which point. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, because we don't want to ask too many questions about our supporters. We want the
Yeah.
bare minimum, but what would be the bare minimum for us?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is as I say, there is a legislative requirement of what you can and can't do. I think will always be a challenge. I think you need to make sure that you are gaining enough information for the purposes of the aims of maybe increasing donator frequency. but you're right, you don't want to put them off with putting in too many consents, and so it's about, I think it's about, for me, if I was to say personally, on a personal level, as long as I make an informed consent to do that, I think that's a really important and powerful piece. Because I think once people have entered that kind of donation funnel, as long as they're clear on the consents that they're giving, I think then that's a big step towards making sure you're balancing it.
Absolutely, consent is essential, and we've seen,
Yeah.
lately a few stories of people receiving,
Yeah.
donation requests without having given their consent, and that can be very detrimental to the reputation of the
Yeah.
charity. So,
I
making
think
sure.
it's about being very open, clear, and transparent as part of that donation funnel that you are consenting. Um, I am a big believer in, making sure it's very clear to people, even from a consumer perspective. All of those minor T's and C's, you want to make it clear what you are and what you're not consenting to your.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that. Next question is, how would you go about building more knowledge about your audience and any insights into what they would prefer to see, or want from a rich emotional connection? So how do we build this data basically?
How do you get that data? So I think it's twofold. I think that you will already. I am a big believer in you will know your audience better than anyone else. And so I think it's a good place to start is, who are your audience now? Who are your audience? Who do you want your audience to be? I'm a big believer that you should be magpieing from people that you like, because we all do it. We all magpie ideas from different places. And it's I guess it's just pulling on the resources that are available to understanding. But I do think it's got to be married to knowing your audience better than anyone else. And that's got to be the starting point. Then you will layer in information that's available to you, whether it be from, say, competitors, but comparable organizations, and looking at what they're doing, what's working. Does that then fit? It's that sort of that Venn diagram, isn't it? Does it fit with my audience? Does it work with what we're trying to do? Because it's not a direct copy, is it? So start with who you are. You should know who you are and what makes you unique. And then using other sources such as the competitive marketplace, any data that you do capture is important through, obviously with the right consents. And then you start to build up that picture. I mean, I don't want to say a cliched phrase, data is king, but once you start to know about your audience, then you can make sure that you're optimizing it for them on a personal level and start to build those emotional connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely that. And for instance, if you have several social media channels, you could see what sort of posts are more successful. Getting
Yeah,
the loads of reaction, whether that is more user generated content, or whether that's more direct ask for donations.
yeah,
So that's also data, and then hopefully your social media platform can give you a little bit of insights into
yeah,
who clicked like, or who hearted a post, whether they were more men
yeah,
or women, or which aged group, etc. So that can give you information, and obviously the website is the way to go. As a charity, we've used Hotjar in the past, which is a great tool to see where
yeah,
people go on your website, and like, where do they maybe drop off, or how long do they stay on the page. So it's that kind of insights, and you, from a charity perspective, you realize that you're sitting on way more data than maybe
yeah,
you initially think.
yeah.
um so
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right, Lisa. You have to marry, I like to probably phrase it as to marry the black and white, which is the data you have, along with
mm,
the feel. Like you say, don't be afraid to put things on social media. Look, there is no silver bullet. There is no one size fits all. And it is a little bit about trial and error, but it's about noting, well, what works for me, that worked, that didn't. And using that, aligning it with any data you have, as you say, yeah.
thank you. Another question from Chris: any recommendations for website CMS that provide more frictionless conversion journeys for donation and or membership?
Yeah. So look, there are a variety of CMSs out there. My personal recommendation would be Umbraco. I think that a lot of what we see, and as I said in the presentation, you need to be thinking about not just works for me now, but where's my shelf life? How can it scale and grow with me? And my personal belief from Chris's question there would be Umbraco, because it allows you the integrations you need. It allows you to put things into your CRM, your donation tools. It's very flexible, but also very, very secure.
Um, and yeah, then two CRM related questions. How important is a CRM system to improving donation and donor journey? And then another one, which is quite related, is what should be the biggest consideration when picking a new CRM system?
So CRM, the importance of a CRM in relation to your organization, but also donation, can't be underestimated. It is significantly important. Whilst your website CMS is your shop window, your CRM is that important bridge piece that allows you to pull that information out. And as I said, one of the challenges we see are people converting from a single donation through to sort of multiple. You can only do that by capturing information. And so making sure that you've got the right CRM in place can't be underestimated. You also need to consider, as I said in the presentation, that the CRM you pick works in harmony with everything else. And there's, depending on the CMS you use, it's got to be interlinked. And that's why I said in the presentation, whilst they can be viewed as quite disparate systems, they all have to work together in harmony. And that's one of the biggest challenges we see to increasing donation frequency, particularly because it allows you to be more joined up.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can add to the sort of consideration when choosing a CRM system, is also taking into consideration what you can do internally, like how many people are in charge of, dealing with that data. Is that just one person with limited bandwidth in terms of time, or is it a whole team? And that will also play a big part in the type of tool you are picking, because you don't want something that's super complicated and maybe just one person will know within the organization. What if that person leaves or is ill for some reason? Who else will be able to use it? If you have an in-house IT team, are they able to create something,
Yeah.
or if you have somebody like an external provider, how much can they help you with that? And definitely, obviously, Oblongata can help with asking these types of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at the Surrey Business Expo yesterday. I had a chat with someone at Phyllis Tuckwell Hospice,
Mm.
and very interestingly, it was like this. It was about, so they're a reasonably sized organization, lots of information coming into them, and the chap was a bit, oh, what can I do with all of this? I've got this kind of data coming in. You're right, you've got to be able to manage it, and that then comes down to the CRM system, and then it's with, does it fit within my ecosystem? And I think that's what, some of the audience should consider.
Okay, thank you. And then last question, what are your biggest takeaways for resolving the friction between one-off and regular donations from your experience? What are the key things that make the biggest difference?
Well, I'm not one to answer a question with a question, but what I would say is, what turns you off from completing a purchase? Really
Okay.
think, boil it down, because when all is said and done, we're all the same. We all, do things the same, whether it be me donating or you donating, Lisa. It's about, when I think about using things, we've all downloaded an app on our phone. Yeah. And we've used it once and the experience was poor because it was clunky. We didn't do it. So I think it's about paring it back. I think it's about making sure that the things that you would expect. So without having a donation tool right in front of me now, I would expect to see, though, different ways to pay that are commensurate with, my life, so Apple Pay, Google Pay, secure card. I'd expect to be able to make it very clear, very easy step journey. And I would always boil it down to myself. We often forget we're thinking about what other people do, but we're the other people as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, well, thank you. That's all we got time for today. Thank you very much, Andrew, for your time and for the very insightful presentation. Once again, as we said, the session has been recorded and we will upload it to watch on demand within a week's time. The slide and all the resources will also be made available. So yes, please feel free to reach out to Andrew for any question you may have about your website and your donation. Thank you, Andrew.
That's great. Thank you very much. Have a great Easter, everyone.
Thank you. And yeah, if you could all share your feedback, that would be fantastic. We've pasted a link in the chat, and as soon as you leave the Zoom link, you will receive a prompt to enter your feedback, and we always appreciate understanding, if you enjoyed the session, what other topics you'd like us to cover. Next webinar will be on the 11th of April at 1 p.m. and supported by our partners from Dell, and we will be having a fantastic panel on artificial intelligence and digital inclusion. So you can check out our website to find out more. Thank you, everyone, and yeah, have a lovely break.